I'm a child sexual abuse survivor from the age of 4 until I was 17, and I want to tell my story.
And I wrote a book.
And I wrote a book, and I'm on the internet. Feet Running and Bare by Lydia Wakefield Hubbard.
Lydia was sexually abused by her father from the age of 4 to the age of 17. He made her promise never to tell anyone. For many years, she kept her promise. You can purchase Lydia's book, Feet Running and Bare, by contacting her at 503-223-5242.
He had asked me to go to the country store with him, and on the way he stopped by a hedge, and he let me drive the car. I thought I was driving. I held the steering wheel, and we pulled over to the side of a hedge, and he unbuttoned his pants, and he took my panties off, and he abused me sexually, and he told me never to tell anyone. The next day, I was in the kitchen with my mother, and I hurt down below, and I told her I hurt down here, and I pointed to my private area, and Mother looked at me, and she took me in the bedroom and laid me on the bed and took my panties off, and her face turned white. And she told my dad I had been abused, and he accused my step-uncle, Bob, my grandfather's stepson, to have done it. And nobody asked me any questions. And that night, our yard was full of people looking for Uncle Bob. And they searched and searched and searched, and I'm glad they didn't find him. It wasn't him, but they didn't ask me. And then my grandfather was there, my mother's father, and he had his head down, and he was sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, because he believed my dad. And so things went from bad to worse, and my father would repeat the incident from time to time, and he always told me never to tell, and I didn't tell. And so then my mother had 6 children, 2 years apart, and then they started coming a year and a half apart for the last 3 pregnancies. And so when she came to the 7th pregnancy, Charlie, he wasn't well when he was born, and he died in her arms when she was making cookies for us kids. And she sent my older brother to the telephone to call somebody, and when he got back home, the baby was dead. We buried Charlie in the family plot with my grandfather, and then she got pregnant again with her 7th pregnancy, and no, it was her 8th pregnancy, my sister. And she had to go to the hospital, and we had a hired girl. And so when Mother came home, she found that my dad and the hired girl were having sexual relations, and there wasn't anything she could do. And so she tolerated it. And so one day, about noon, she was in the kitchen by the sink, and she said to the hired girl, "It's time to start making lunch now." My brother Danny was sitting at the table reading a book, and I was sitting across the room in a chair looking at a book. And the hired girl said to Mother, "I don't have to make lunch. I don't have to do anything you say." And Mother got angry, and she picked up this carving knife, and she went for the hired girl, and she started screaming. And so Dan got up, and he wrestled the carving knife away from Mother and set it on the counter and sat Mother on one side of the table and the hired girl on the other side of the table, and they glared at each other. In a few minutes, the door opened, and Dad came in with some sacks. He'd been at the store, and the hired girl jumped up and ran to him and said, "Francis came to me with a carving knife." And Dad looked at Mother and said, "You did that?" She said, "No, I didn't."
The hired girl said, "Yes, she did."
And Mother said, "I didn't." And Dad said to Dan, "Did your mother do that?" And he said, "I don't know, I didn't see anything." Mother was terrified. She had fright all over her face. She ran across to me. She put her hands on my shoulders. She looked at me with her terrified face and eyes. She said, "Did I do that?" I looked at her. I said, "No." Dad glared at me from across the room. Then he waited a moment and he said, "Okay, I never want to hear anything like that again." Then the hired girl was clinging to Dad, and he took her upstairs to the boys' room. It was next to the girls' room where the hired girl and I slept, but there was a door between it and a wall. But I heard the bed going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, and they were having sex. And the next day, the hired girl and I were laying on the girl's bed, and she said to me, "You lied," and I didn't say anything. The next thing I knew, the hired girl was gone. The county was there. Dad had gotten her pregnant, and he ran out of town, and he went to Lincoln, Nebraska, across the state line, where his mother lived, and his brother and two half-brothers. And he got a job at Cushman Motors and learned to be a mechanic. And so Mother had to sell the farm all by herself with the help of a longtime family friend, Arnold, and he helped her, and she sold everything, and we took the train to Lincoln, Nebraska. Dad met us at the train station and took us to the house that he had gotten for us to live in. We lived 1 year in Lincoln, Nebraska, and Mother got pregnant with her 9th pregnancy. She had trouble. She went to meetings. I think they were meetings for consolation or support, because she knew she was going to die. She had placenta previa, and so she went to meetings, and she only took me with her. And I waited in the waiting room, and she went in another room with a man, and I heard them talking. And they talked a while, and then we walked home, and Mother talked all the way. She never said what she was there for, but I think she was getting counseling for dying. She told us kids, when we were sitting on the couch on a break that she took from working in the house, she said, "I am going to die and leave you children. Your dad will get married again, because men are different than women, and he will. He'll keep you children together with him. He promised me he will. I want you kids to be good when he gets married." And one day, my brother Bill and I were outside playing in the vacant lot next to our house where we lived. We came into the kitchen. We looked through the archway into the living room. Mother was standing there. She was white as a sheet. She couldn't talk. Bill immediately ran to one of the neighbors. Someone came and took Mother to the hospital. That was the last time I saw my mother alive. She was placenta previa. The baby died, and Mother got peritonitis. And then on the death certificate, I got a copy of the death certificate when I went back to the cemetery one time with my husband. And it said she died of peritonitis and placenta previa, but she was abused before I ever knew her. My dad was good to her the last year that she lived. The night that Mother died, he took me from the girl's bed into his bedroom, and he started it. I tried to pull away. He slammed me down to the bed. I was afraid. I lay very still. pretty soon there was a knock on the door. The neighbor said, "You need to go to the hospital right away." Dad put on his pants before he went to the door. He left and went to the hospital. I went back to bed with my sisters. In the middle of the night, Dad came home. He awakened us 3 older kids, Danny, Bill, and me. We sat at the kitchen table. He said, "Mother died tonight. I'll keep you kids together with me." We all sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And then there was a funeral. And Grandpa Thomas and Aunt Grace came from Denver for the funeral. And I'm sure Grandma Thomas came too. I was 10 years old. He didn't believe in little kids going to funerals. So none of the little children came. And so we moved to Portland, Oregon because he could work in the shipyards. And we lived in Vanport for 6 months before the flood. And then we moved to the Progress area between Tigard and Beaverton, and we lived there for about 7 years. And he continued to have relations with me, but I always lay very still. I didn't move. I was ashamed because when we were in Lincoln, I was upstairs with my 2 younger brothers, and I thought, I'll be smart and tell them I know something they don't know. So I told them, we can do something with this. And I pointed to my private area. And their eyes bugged out. And they said, "No, sister." And so I knew how bad it was. So when we sat on the couch that day in Lincoln, Nebraska, they told Mother on me what I had done. Mother didn't say anything. She put her head down for what seemed like a very long time. And I have never seen such shame on anybody's face as what I saw on my mother's face that day. I knew then, deep in my bones, how shameful it was. And then I started to resist my father. But there was no resistance possible. But anyway, he got married in 3 years, and we moved from the Progress area to Sunnyside, between Milwaukee and Clackamas. And I don't know where Ellen, my stepmother, was. She never went anywhere. Maybe she went on the bus to town. But anyway, I was reading a book in the living room, and Dad stood in the doorway of the hallway leading to their bedroom. And he said, "Come in here, sister." And I knew I better go. So I went, and I lay down, and he started fondling me. All of a sudden, I got sick to my stomach. I thought, I don't have to put up with this anymore. Before I knew what I was doing, I rolled out of bed. I walked down the hall, out through the kitchen, into the woods, and I hid and I stood there. My heart was pounding. I just stood there. I thought, I don't have to put up with that anymore. I was 17. And Dad called and called and called from the kitchen door. I didn't respond. And then the calling stopped. And I knew I would have to go in and face him. And so I was determined. I walked out of the woods and up to the kitchen door. I stepped into the kitchen. He was standing at the kitchen sink. We looked at each other. All he said was, "It won't happen again." And I believed him. And it never happened again.
Well, I'm Louise Bouchard. I direct Voices Set Free, which provides services to sexual assault survivors as well as family members. And I just want you to know that Lydia and I have become good friends over a period of time, probably about a year by now, and that we are available to come out to your programs and do speaking engagements. We'd like to make sure that Lydia has that opportunity to have the conversations with people, the face-to-face interactions. Our program is available to get help through, and we're a good team. So feel free to see this tape on Voices Set Free webpage as well. The number to call is 503-997-8041. So here we are, Lydia, ready to go, aren't we?
Thank you.
You're welcome.